All right, we're back on another Sound the Battle Cry, and today the name of the message is The Mistress of Witchcrafts, Rome's Occult Knowledge and Power, and Coming Transformation. Yes, this is about Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, and if you want some background to this to get caught up, I suggest you go back and watch or listen to the messages, Four Kingdoms in Daniel, and then the other one is The Little Horn Power Revealed. And those messages will get you caught up on the Bible prophecy that explains how that the Roman Catholic Church is the little horn power. There's four beasts, four kingdoms. There's Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. Rome is the fourth kingdom. There's 10 horns because the Roman Empire split into 10 parts. 3 were taken out by the little horn power that arose, became Papal Rome. Papal Rome took over pagan Rome. They absorbed all their mysteries. That's exactly what happened. Bible prophecy lays it all out. And we're going to be talking about that today. And also one other thing that ties together with the introduction to this is it's called the Mistress of Witchcrafts, because in Revelation chapter 17, there is a depiction of a woman, a harlot, who is riding a beast. The harlot is the false church power, and the beast is a kingdom, a political power. And the religious power, the apostate religious power, controls the political power. The Catholic Church has political and religious power. They have two kings, they have two keys on their flag, which is the spiritual and temporal power together. And it's combined with the woman that rides the beast. She is the mistress of witchcrafts. That is the mother of harlots. We're going to read more about that. And this is very relevant to the message we're going to be talking about today, that we're going to be laying it all out. That the Catholic Church is the mistress of witchcrafts. And they do have occult knowledge that is taken from all the way back to Babylon. That's why they're called Mystery Babylon. And a lot of, occultists love to take stuff back from Babylon. And the gods and the customs and the rituals and their secrets and these types of things. But you can see in the book of Daniel, there's this statue I talk about in that show, Four Kingdoms in Daniel. And the head of gold is Babylon. You have Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. But it's all one statue. And that's why, even when you get to the fourth kingdom, it still retains the mystery religion beliefs of Babylon. You see, because there's keepers of the mysteries. And they pass it down from generation to generation through symbolism and rituals, secret societies, these types of things, many different ways. They have kept it hidden from the masses. Esoteric teachings. And what I'm going to show you today is the Vatican they are the ones that have inherited these mysteries. They are the keepers of the mysteries. It's a very strong deception. I know. People don't understand because they have the veneer of Christianity. It's very deceptive. But I'm going to show you today. We're going to start off today with some Bible verses laying out what we're describing here to show you that the Bible talks about this, clearly says that this is the case, this is the truth. And then after that, what I'm going to show you is evidence from history, from occultists, from Jesuits, showing you Rome's occult knowledge and power. And then towards the end of the teaching, we're going to be talking about the transformation of Rome as well. Okay? So there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff in this teaching you may have never heard before in your life, but I promise you, I back up everything that I say the best that I can. I document it. I give you the sources, and I give you further reading that if you want to go dive down and dig in more into it, I show you where you can. Okay? So let's get into it. We're going to start off with these Bible verses. And first, the message is named after this. Nahum chapter 3, verse 4. Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcrafts. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Now, sometimes in Bible prophecy, it talks about, it could be in the immediate context, talking about the literal city of Nineveh or these types of things. But spiritually speaking, all through the Bible, it talks about harlot, mistress of witchcraft, a strange woman, and it's a spiritual description of this end times apostate Roman Catholic Church. Okay, and this is one of the descriptors, mistress of witchcrafts. And also uses the word harlot. And we're going to see what she is called in the next passage. Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, like Vicar of Christ, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, as they wear, their priesthood wears, and decked with gold and precious stones, and the golden cups that they do their rituals with, and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication, and upon her forehead a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And that is the Catholic Church. Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots. See, we saw up here? We saw up here the well-favored harlot. She is the mother of harlots. And in the Bible, if you read and you study, there's the usage of the word fornication or playing the harlot. Spiritually speaking, it means to commit idolatry, to worship other gods, or to engage in the rituals and customs that the heathen use and people use to worship false gods. That's committing spiritual fornication and whoredom. And so when it says mother of harlots, she is the mother of spiritual whoredom and fornication. The mistress of witchcrafts. All right, let's continue. Here's another one. Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. This is very significant, right? Because we're talking about Babylon, but it says, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. So all nations are deceived about the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, about Babylon, and they are deceived by sorceries. The Bible is clear on that. And you wonder why there isn't a lot of clear exposition about this in churches. Why aren't they explaining, hey, look, it says that the nations, all nations, are deceived by the sorceries, the witchcrafts of this Babylon? Who is that? How do they do it? Here's another one. Isaiah chapter 47, verse 8. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, thou that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow. Okay, again, so we're talking about a woman again. Spiritually speaking, a woman. Neither shall I know the loss of children, but these 2 things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. The loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. Okay, so again, we have this prophetic spiritual application towards a woman who is using sorceries, enchantments, and God is going to judge them. And this description is used over and over and over again in the Bible. Let me show you another one. Some people have a problem with this, but I'm going to explain this a little bit more depth. And I'm going to talk about Jezebel. 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 22. And it came to pass when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace? So long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many. Now, the reason I'm quoting this is, Jezebel was a wicked, wicked woman. One of the most wicked women that is depicted in the Bible. Infamous, right? And she had prophets of God murdered. And she was a worshiper of false gods, of Baal. She had hundreds of prophets of Baal that were in service to her. They sat at her table, it says. And it says that she had so many witchcrafts and whoredoms. Now, this is talking about, in this passage, Jehu is talking to a literal woman named Jezebel back then. Now, what some people have a problem with is using the name Jezebel for a spiritual application. Now, let me just give the disclaimer that sometimes in the charismatic movement, they go way too crazy and they go into extremes, talking about Jezebel spirit and Jezebel spirit here and there and everywhere, and that's what they call all kinds of stuff. We don't want to get out of control like that. But I'm going to show you that the Bible does use the word Jezebel in a spiritual sense. Okay, so let's look. Is the name Jezebel used symbolically in the Bible? Yes, very clearly. Revelation chapter 2, verse 20. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Okay? So, it says that woman Jezebel. Is that the Jezebel from the Old Testament still alive in the book of Revelation? No, absolutely not. She's not. It's describing the character of a woman. They're suffering some woman to teach there. And it wasn't good. But what we're talking about here are the characteristics of Jezebel. Okay? And if you study Jezebel, there are a number of characteristics you can see. Obviously, she worshipped false gods. She usurped the authority of her husband, lied to have people of God killed. She was very, very wicked. And we see that character is the same description of the harlot churches, especially the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. It is that strange woman, that mistress of witchcrafts. The description of Jezebel fits the description of this apostate mistress of witchcrafts, Mystery Babylon. And I'm not the only one to say that. I'll give you one example of someone in history who said the same thing. John Gill was a Baptist preacher. Let's read what he said about that. By her is meant the apostate church of Rome, comparable to Jezebel, the wife of Ahab, as she was the daughter of a heathen. So is Rome papal, the daughter of Rome pagan. And as she was the wife of Ahab, and therefore a queen, so the whore of Babylon calls herself. And as Jezebel was famous for her paintings, so the Church of Rome for her pretensions to religion and holiness, and for the gaudiness of her worship. And as she was remarkable for her idolatry, whoredoms, and witchcrafts, cruel persecution of the prophets of the Lord, and for murder and innocent blood she shed, so the Church of Rome. For her idolatrous worship of images, for her whoredoms, both in a literal and spiritual sense, and for the witchcrafts, magic, and devilish arts many of her popes have been addicted to, and especially for her barbarities and cruelties exercised upon the true professors of Christ, and for the blood of the martyrs with which she has been drunk, and as Jezebel stirred up Ahab against good and faithful men, is this church stirred up the secular powers, emperors, kings, and princes against the true followers of Christ. And the end of both of them is much alike, As scarce anything was left of Jezebel, so Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, shall be cast into the sea and be found no more at all. And that's what happened to Jezebel. She was cast out of a tower. She was run over by Jehu with a chariot. She was eaten by dogs. They licked up her blood. And all that was left was her hands, her skull, nothing else. And so it is a great description, metaphor for this apostate church, as Jezebel is. And also how, as he was saying, Jezebel, used Ahab's authority, stirred him up as he was the king, the political power, to persecute the people of God. It's the same thing. Jezebel, the woman, riding the beast, the political power. Over and over again. Okay? So that's just a way that Jezebel is used to describe this mistress of witchcrafts. Now, that sets you up for the next part, which is going to be showing you that the Catholic Church, Vatican, does have occult knowledge and power. Is there evidence pointing towards the Vatican being the mistress of witchcrafts? That's the description, right? That's the phrase. The mistress of witchcrafts. Does the Vatican fit that description? I'm going to offer you a few pieces of evidence. We could give many, many more, but we're not going to take, 10 hours to do this. So here's a few. First one. H.P. Blavatsky on the Jesuits. Now, if you don't know who H.P. Blavatsky was, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, she's the founder of Theosophy. And if you go study that, you can see that she thought Lucifer was a good guy and that the God of the Bible was bad. Basically, if you could sum it all up, I have plenty of quotes to prove that. She said it in her own writings. Lucifer is good and God bad. Okay? Now, she did not like the Jesuits. Now, again, if you need to get caught up on the Jesuits, I suggest you go back. I've been doing a series on the Jesuits. I have 4 messages up on the Jesuits. Okay? So go back and watch that. I started off with the founder, Ignatius Loyola, and then I talked about their exercises, their moral code. I talked about the Black Pope and their structure and all this other types of things. Go get caught up on that if you need to understand how they really operate. But we're going to see here that she really didn't like them. But she says some very interesting things about them. Because in Satan's kingdom, when people are into the occult and witchcraft and these types of things, they're not exactly all in harmony. Okay? They're not all in complete unity because they get jealous of each other. Especially if they think someone has more power. Boy, there's a lot of ego battles with people into the occult. So let's look at what she wrote. And I give you the source here, I'll give you the link. I have the web address there. Blavatsky, Collected Writings, Volume 9. She wrote this article called Theosophy or Jesuitism. And she had a publication actually called Lucifer. But we have here Lucifer, Volume 2, Number 10, June 1888. And the page numbers, right? Okay, so all the way back in 1888, Blavatsky wrote about the Jesuits. Now, let's see what she said specifically in this article about the Jesuits and the occult. She said this: "It is curious to observe how persistently the order has assailed everything like occultism from the earliest times, and theosophy since the foundation of its last society, which is ours. The Moors and the Jews of Spain felt the weight of the oppressive hand of obscurantism no less than the Kabbalists and the alchemists of the Middle Ages. One would think esoteric philosophy, and especially the occult arts or magic, were an abomination to these good holy fathers. And so indeed they would have the world believe. But when one studies history and the works of their own authors, published with the imprimatur of the order, what does one find? that the Jesuits have practiced not only occultism, but black magic in its worst form, more than any other body of men, and that to it they owe in large measure their power and influence. Wow. So before I continue, because she has more to say, if you've never heard this before, I want you to let this sink in a little bit. Blavatsky is saying the Jesuits have practiced more black magic more than anyone else, and that they owe their power and influence to the black magic, their knowledge and their acquisition of power through black magic. That's what she's saying. Now, where would they get this power? Where would they learn all this stuff? Well, they went all around the world. See? Jesuit missionaries. And they would travel to remote places. In Tibet, in jungles in South America, in Africa, Haiti. And they would go among the tribes there. And the occult practices and the folklore and all those other types of things that they were into in there, in those regions, they would absorb it. Bring it back home, put it all together, and look what you got. Now let's continue. To refresh the memory of our readers, and all those whom it may concern, a short summary of the doings and actings of our good friends may be once more attempted. For those who are inclined to laugh and deny the subterranean and truly infernal means used by Ignatius's black militia, we may state facts. In Isis Unveiled, it was said of the Holy Fraternity that, quote, though established only in 1535 to 1540, in 1555 there was already general outcry raised against them. And now once more, quote, that crafty, learned, conscienceless, terrible soul of Jesuitism within the body of Romanism is slowly but surely possessing itself of the whole prestige and spiritual power that clings to it. Throughout the whole of antiquity, where, in what land can we find anything like this order or anything even approaching it? The cry of an outraged public morality was raised against this order from its very birth. Barely 15 years had elapsed after the bull approving its constitution was promulgated, when its members began to be driven away from one place to the other. Portugal and the Low Countries got rid of them in 1578, France in 1594, Venice in 1606, Naples in 1622. From St. Petersburg they were expelled in 1815, and from all Russia in 1820. And she quoted from Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, page 352. And they were expelled from many different countries, over 80 countries. They kicked them out. You wonder why. Weren't up to anything good. Now, she's just kind of giving some background there. And a side note that Blavatsky gives herself, this is her note in her article. She says this, quote, mesmerism or hypnotism is a prominent factor in occultism. It is magic. The Jesuits were acquainted with and practiced it ages before Mesmer and Charcot. H.P. Blavatsky. Okay? So she says they practiced hypnotism and that is magic, and that they were doing it before Mesmer. Because, a lot of times they trace hypnotism back to Mesmer. They name mesmerism after him, right? And that's a whole nother rabbit trail to go down. But that's very interesting for a number of different reasons. We don't too many rabbit holes to go down. But anyway, she offers that. Let's continue. Then she says this. Let us then examine the ideas on magic of the Jesuits, that magic which they are pleased to call devilish and satanic when studied by Theosophists. See how mad she is about this? It's jealousy. Let us then examine the ideas on magic of the Jesuits. Writing on this subject in his secret instructions, Anthony Escobar says, this is a Jesuit, by the way, It is lawful to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil. Okay, let that sink in for a second. He says it's lawful to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil, provided the preservation and use of that knowledge do not depend upon the devil. For the knowledge is good in itself, and the sin by which it was acquired is gone by. See, this is the way that they use the casuistry. I did a teaching about that, the Jesuits' use of casuistry, to explain away and justify any sin possible. They try to find a way of justifying it. And that's what he was doing right there, making an excuse to use the assistance of devils through magic, saying that it's okay. And she was quoting, she said, Anthony Escobar. So I'm just showing you who that is. She's quoting Jesuit Antonio Escobar y Mendoza. He was alive from 1589 to 1669. And the quote is taken from the book Moral Theology, also known as Theologia Moralis, by Alphonsus Liguori, who was later made a saint by the Church, the Catholic Church. Okay, so that's where that quote comes from. The Jesuits saying it's okay to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil. All right, let's continue. Hence, why should not a Jesuit cheat the devil as well as he cheats every layman? That's what she says. Here's another quote that she quotes from the Jesuits. Astrologers and soothsayers are either bound or not bound to restore the reward of their divination if the event does not come to pass. They got to give their money back. I own, remarks the good Father Escobar, that the former opinion does not at all please me, because when the astrologer or diviner has exerted all the diligence in the diabolic art which is essential to his purpose, he has fulfilled his duty, whatever may be the result. As the physician, when he has made use of medicines according to the principles of his professional knowledge, is not bound to restore the fee which he has received if his patient should die, so neither is the astrologer bound to restore his charge and cost to the person who has consulted him, except when he has used no effort or was ignorant of his diabolic art, because when he has used his endeavors, he has not deceived. Now, this is so insane. It just blows me away. So this is Antonio Escobar again. But listen, what he is saying here is he's not arguing against, being involved with practicing the occult, using astrology, divination. He's saying that he doesn't like the remark that when someone says that, if they pay someone to tell them the future, right, like a psychic, and then the event doesn't come to pass, that the psychic should give them their money back. And the Jesuit says, no, I don't think they should they should have to give the money back. Because, they did their best. It's not their fault. It's like a doctor who tries to heal you, and if he doesn't, he's not successful, at least he tried. He shouldn't have to give money back. So he's justifying a witch for not giving their money back for someone who paid them to tell them the future. Unreal. But anyways, Blavatsky quotes that. Here's another one. Busenbaum and Lacroix in Theologia Moralis say, quote, palmistry, another occult practice, may be considered lawful if from the lines and divisions of the hands it can ascertain the disposition of the body and conjecture with probability the propensities and affections of the soul. Again, they're saying it's okay to do palmistry, various occult practices, it's okay. Now, who were these people? Busenbaum and Lacroix. Busenbaum was a Jesuit theologian, Hermann Busenbaum, and Lacroix is Jesuit Claude Lacroix. Lacroix made a commentary on Busenbaum's work, Medulla Theologiae Moralis, called Theologia Moralis. Okay, so that's the source. I added that to there just so you had a little bit more to from what she quoted. Okay, So she's quoting multiple Jesuits that are in their own writings justifying occult practices. Let's see what else she said. Students of occultism should know that while the Jesuits have, by their devices, contrived to make the world in general, and Englishmen in particular, think there is no such thing as magic, these astute and wily schemers themselves hold magnetic circles and form magnetic chains by the concentration of their collective will when they have any special object to affect or any particular and important person to influence. Now, she had a lot of knowledge about this stuff, and I'm sure she rubbed shoulders with some of these Jesuits. And I know that I believe she knew Rudolf Steiner, and I knew that he had studied the Jesuits. I think he might have known some of them too. So they could have had a little bit more knowledge, even than they're letting on in these writings, but they definitely knew a lot of stuff that they were into. But so that's the end of the section with Blavatsky. But just to say one more thing before we move on, so she quotes some of their writings that they justify occult practices, but her claim, though, her big claim here is that they have knowledge and power of black magic more than anyone else in the world. That's where they get all their power and influence from. Obviously acknowledging how much power and influence they have. Very, very interesting. All right, let's continue to the next point. The Bembeen Table of Isis. Bembeen Table of Isis. And you can read a general overview on Wikipedia, Bembeen Tablet. But I'm going to show you a little bit more. We got the sources here for this. But just a general overview, if you've never heard of this before. The Bembeen Tablet, the Bembeen Tablet of Isis, or the Mensa Isaiah Tablet, is an elaborate tablet of bronze with enamel and silver inlay, most probably of Roman origin, but imitating the ancient Egyptian style. It was named in the Renaissance after Cardinal Bembo, a celebrated antiquarian who acquired it after the 1527 sack of Rome. Okay, named after a Catholic cardinal, Cardinal Bembo. Pietro Bembo was a cardinal in the Catholic Church and a knight hospitaller. Okay, that is an old military order in the Catholic Church. They were around all the way back in the same time period that the Knights Templar were around. So they're very old too. But he was part of that. And he was a Catholic cardinal, okay? So the Bembeen Tablet is named after a Catholic cardinal. Now, why is that significant? Well, let's continue. Later, in the 17th century, the Jesuit, here's the Jesuits again, Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher in Oedipus Egyptiacus, I'm messing this up, Egyptiacus, I apologize. My pronunciation of that word is terrible, and I shouldn't have even attempted it, but it's about Egypt. So let's continue. 1652. Used the tablet. So Kircher used the tablet as a primary source for developing his translations of hieroglyphics, which are now known to be incorrect. Incorrect for the uninitiated. That's what my note says. I said that because there is some funny business going on here on Wikipedia and in, of course, mainstream scholarship. It's just going to be a bunch of, garbage, very shallow interpretations of stuff, even misdirection, in my opinion. But anyways, they're going to say, well, it's just this tablet. They said it was a tablet that you could use to interpret hieroglyphics, so we could get the meaning of hieroglyphics. Then we found later that it's all garbage and that none of these interpretations of the hieroglyphics were correct, that it was incorrect. Now, what I'm going to show you is there are multiple occultists who said, no, it's got nothing to do with that, but this is something that is very important to the occult. Let me show you. The Jesuit Kircher's speculations were used by several occultists, including Eliphas Levi, William Wynne Westcott, and Manly P. Hall, as a key to interpreting the Book of Thoth, or Tarot. Platonistic writer Thomas Taylor even claimed that this tablet formed the altar before which Plato stood as he received initiation within a subterranean hall in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay? So think about this. This Jesuit, Kircher, studied the Bembine Table of Isis, and his studies were used by infamous occultists Eliphas Levi, William Wynne Westcott, and Manly Palmer Hall to help interpret the Book of Thoth and tarot cards. They were using the work of a Jesuit. And I have a quote for you after this from Manly Palmer Hall himself, from his book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, and it's from a chapter called The Bembine Table of Isis. Okay, and I give you a link to where you can read it yourself. You can check. And let's read this quote, what Manly P. Hall says about this. Those familiar with the fundamental principles of Hermetic philosophy will recognize in the Mensa Isiaca the key to Chaldean, Egyptian, and Greek theology. In his Antiquities, the learned Benedictine father Montfaucon admits his inability to cope with the intricacies of its symbolism. He therefore doubts that the emblems upon the tablet possess any significance worthy of consideration, and ridicules Kircher, the Jesuit, declaring him to be more obscure than the tablet itself. Laurentius Pignorius reproduced the tablet in connection with a descriptive essay in 1605, but his timidly advanced explanations demonstrated his ignorance concerning the actual interpretations of the figures. All these scholars came around, they don't understand what it means. And then Kircher's Oedipus Egyptian thing, published in 1654, Kircher attacked the problem with characteristic avidity. Now, listen to this quote. Being peculiarly qualified for such a task by years of research in matters pertaining to the secret doctrines of antiquity. Okay? He's talking about a Jesuit here. That a Jesuit is particularly qualified for this task because of his years of research in matters pertaining to the secret doctrines of antiquity. Why is a Jesuit qualified from so much study of the secret doctrines of antiquity? That he can give the proper interpretation of the Bembine Table of Isis. So he was qualified, and with the assistance of a group of eminent scholars, Kircher accomplished much towards an exposition of the mysteries of the tablet. And then he goes on to say, Eliphas Levi and others went even further with it and, talked about other mysteries. But the point is that Kircher, the Jesuit, pioneered a huge amount of study of this Bembine Table of Isis that later occultists used to further the study of this tablet. And these are some of the most influential occultists in modern times, in history. Eliphas Levi and Manly P. Hall, influenced by the work of a Jesuit. Again, I think very significant when it comes to the subject that we're studying here, the theme. Next point. We're going to talk about pine cones. Now, you might be laughing. Some of you might know where I'm going with this. Some of you might have no clue. Why would we talk about pine cones? Part of me that wants to troll people wanted to just make a thumbnail that was only a picture of a pine cone and have everybody wondering what this was going to be about. But nevertheless, this is very, very significant information, okay? Please pay attention. I'm serious. You may have never heard of this, but again, we're going to tie the occult to the Vatican, okay? Pine cones and pineal glands. I got the link here for where you can go read this. Again, this is taken from Manly P. Hall's book, who, by the way, very influential occultist. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. Very influential Freemason and occultist. His book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, is one of the most authoritative books that is a general overview of the history of occult practices. Okay? Now, a quote, this is a quote from his book, and this is from the chapter, The Hieremic Legend, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Manly P. Hall. Okay? Hieremic Legend. Because there is a character in Freemasonry called Hiram Abiff. Right? So, let's read what he says here. Sufficient similarity exists between the Masonic Hiram and the Kundalini of Hindu mysticism. Okay, so have you ever heard about that? Kundalini, you talk about Kundalini energy. Kundalini is like this, supposed to be this serpent coiled at the base of someone's spine. And they can do yoga and other things to awaken this Kundalini energy, right? This taught in Hinduism and different types of yoga, these types, Hatha yoga, these types of things. But here he says, the Masonic Chiram and the Kundalini of Hindu mysticism to warrant the assumption that Chiram may be considered a symbol also of the spirit fire moving through the sixth ventricle of the spinal column. And I promise you I'm going somewhere with this that's very significant. Okay? So he's talking about the spirit fire. This fire, it's a spiritual fire that moves through the spine. You hear this talked a lot about in the occult. The exact science of human regeneration. Now, what he means by regeneration is not what is meant in biblical Christianity. Regeneration in the Bible is when someone goes from being dead in sin to being made spiritually alive by the Holy Spirit. They're born again. They're made a new person. And so they might, some secret societies even use the word born again too. But the distinction is it's a different process. Being born again is, in the Bible, is you are spiritually dead, you love your sin, you hate God, you're in rebellion. And then when you're born again, that old person, that person that you were dies. You become a new person who, when you're born again, wants to do what is good, what is righteous, wants to do things that are pleasing to God, read the Bible, pray. That's the fruit of being regenerated, born again. That's not the fruit of being born again like all the rituals they do in secret societies and the occult and stuff, and going and laying in a coffin and popping out and saying, oh, you're born again, you've seen the light. Well, the result of that born again experience is not a desire for righteousness. It's even more in the depths of wickedness. Okay, so there's a big distinction here. But actually, what he's talking about here about regeneration is the process whereby someone becomes God. Okay, so let's look. The exact science of human regeneration is the lost key of Masonry. For when the spirit fire, the spiritual fire, is lifted up through the 33 degrees or segments of the spinal column, that you ever wonder why you see the number 33 everywhere? Everywhere. In the background in movies and in ads and all different types of places, people say it. I don't know why. Why does the number 33 pop up everywhere? Well, why is there 33 degrees in Freemasonry? Well, he's telling you. He says it's connected with the 33 segments of the spinal column. And he's talking about the spiritual fire going up through all 33 degrees and enters into the dome chamber of the human skull. It finally passes into the pituitary body, which is Isis, where it invokes Ra, the pineal gland, and demands the sacred name. Okay? So he calls the pituitary gland Isis, and he calls the pineal gland Ra. These are the occult symbols that he uses, these gods that he puts on those glands. Operative Masonry, in the fullest meaning of that term, signifies the process by which the eye of Horus is opened. Now there's so many truth bombs in here. You need to pay attention, okay? He's telling you something significant. He's saying the fullest meaning of the term Masonry, Freemasonry, signifies the process by which the eye of Horus is opened. Now you see the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye everywhere. Even in Freemasonry, they have a square and compass with an eye in the middle. Or there's the eye floating above the pyramid, right? And you see that eye everywhere. That eye, he talks about it being opened. And the process by which it's opened is this spiritual fire going up the 33 degrees of the spinal column and hitting your pineal gland. He's going to show you. E.A. Wallace Budge has noted that in some of the papyri illustrating the entrance of the souls of the dead into the judgment hall of Osiris, the deceased person has a pine cone attached to the crown of his head. Now why, in this Egyptian symbolism, in their depiction of Osiris, illustrating the entrance of the souls of the dead into the judgment hall of Osiris. Okay, so on the souls of the dead, the deceased person has a pine cone attached to the crown of his head. Now, why would they have a dead person have a pine cone attached to their head? And then it says the Greek mystics also carried a symbolic staff, the upper end being in the form of a pine cone. There it is again. Egyptians, Greeks, using the symbol of a pine cone. Why? Why would they talk about a pine cone? Who cares about a pine cone? Which was called the thyrsus of Bacchus. In the human brain, there is a tiny gland called the pineal body, or the pineal gland, which is the sacred eye of the ancients and corresponds with the third eye of the Cyclops. Now, what he's telling you is, in the brain, we know that because we hear it all the time today now, right? This was written a while ago. He says there's a pineal gland. And he says that's the sacred eye of the ancients. It's the third eye. And so, little is known concerning the function of the pineal body, the pineal gland, which Descartes suggests, more wisely than he knew, might be the abode of the spirit of man. He wrote about that, the seat of the soul, I believe. Descartes wrote about that. Pineal gland, third eye, might be the abode of the spirit of man. As its name signifies, the pineal gland is the sacred pine cone in man. The eye single, which cannot be opened until Chiron, the spirit fire, is raised to the sacred seals, which are called the seven churches in Asia. That's where he kind of perverts the Bible. Not kind of, he does. Okay? So, let's summarize this. First of all, he says right here, the pineal gland is the pine cone. Okay? So, this authoritative occultist tells you straight up, the pine cone represents the pineal gland. And he just got done telling you the pineal gland is the third eye. And he told you before, what? He said the fullest meaning of Masonry is the process by which the eye of Horus is opened. And they open it through the spiritual fire going up, the Kundalini energy going up to 33 degrees of the spine. Okay? All ties together. And that's the process. By the way, regeneration means becoming a god. Okay? So if you just said it plainly like this, the goal in, he's saying, upper levels of Freemasonry and a lot of secret societies is to become a god. And to become a god is to open the third eye. And to open the third eye is through the third eye is the pineal gland. And you do that through the spiritual fire going up the 33 segments of the spinal column, the Kundalini energy. How do you do that? Well, they talk about yoga and shaking and all types of other things. They're taking drugs. Everybody talks about it today. Now, isn't that significant? Before we continue, because we're going to talk about the Vatican again, right? But before we continue, don't you think it's significant that one of the most authoritative occultists and Freemasons in history is telling you that, hey, the goal here that we do in the occult is opening the third eye, the pineal gland, to become a god, right? And now we have people promoting everywhere DMT and ayahuasca to do what? Open people's third eye. Activate that pineal gland. Right? And so there's something significant about that. That this is something they focus on in the occult. Because please, I pray that if you are messing around with that stuff and you want to watch my video that I did called The Spiritual Danger of Altered States of Consciousness. I go in depth and talk about, from the Bible and from science, about trance states, altered states of consciousness. I talk about taking drugs like DMT, ayahuasca, what it does, the state it puts your mind in, and how it's dangerous spiritually. A lot of people see entities and weird things here. People talk about clockwork elves. Well, guess what? Manly P. Hall talks about elves. He calls them elementals. These are just categories of spiritual beings he talks about in the occult. Undines and elves and all these other types of things. Now, you just trust that these things are just what they say they are. They would never lie to you. Why do you immediately trust the moral character of something that you see? Some spiritual being. Automatically morally good, you assume that? Is that because you're scared to think that it might be something else lying to you? Assuming a different shape? Or telling you things that you want to hear, which is mostly ego boosting? Or they say, oh, I have ego death. But then after, they're more proud than ever. Causes a lot of confusion. But let me just tell you this straight. The pineal gland is there, obviously. You release, naturally, God put it there. But when you sleep, you do have DMT naturally released into your body. And that's fine. But when you start messing with it and trying to activate things and open the third eye yourself, you're messing with things you're not supposed to. And you're opening up doors you're not supposed to. And you're not going to be protected once you open that door. And if you suffer the consequences of doing that, that's your fault. Okay? You think it's stupid, you think it's paranoid or dumb, ignorant Christians, fine, go ahead. You mess with it, that's on you. Okay? You got the warning. No reason for anyone to chase you around and babysit you. You want to mess around with it, you want to kick open that door, wait till you see what's waiting for you on the other side after you open that door. But anyways, I just wanted to say a little something about that in case someone's thinking about this stuff. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who have messed with this that can tell you stories about what happened. Now, I haven't done DMT and ayahuasca. I have taken psilocybin mushrooms. I opened a door, and it wasn't good. And you can go watch my testimony from Death Metal to Life in Christ, and you can hear what happened. But anyways, Also, after having said all this stuff about pine cones and pineal glands, you might say, wow, that's crazy. But who asked? You might say. You have that, there's that meme online sometimes. Someone just says a bunch of stuff to a reply to someone's comment and they go, wow, that's crazy, but who asked? What does that have to do with anything? Well, I'll tell you. There's a Catholic connection to this pine cone and pineal gland. Right here. Now, if you're listening, you can't see it. But what it is a giant pine cone statue. And there's a couple birds next to it. Now, what is this pine cone statue and where is it? Well, this pine cone statue is called the Fontana della Pina. And you can go read about this. Look it up on Wikipedia. Fontana della Pina, or simply Pina pine cone, is a former Roman fountain which now decorates a vast niche in the wall of the Vatican facing the Cortile della Pina, located in Vatican City in Rome, Italy. Okay? So there is a giant pine cone statue in Vatican City, composed of a large bronze pine cone, almost 4 meters high, very tall, which once spouted water from the top. The Pina originally stood near the Pantheon next to the Temple of Isis. It was moved to the courtyard of the old St. Peter's Basilica during the Middle Ages and then moved again in 1608 to its present location. In his Divine Comedy, Dante describes the size of the head of the giant Nimrod by referencing this fountain. He says this, quote, "His face appeared to me as long and large as is at Rome the pine cone of St. Peter's." So even Dante referenced it. The pine cone of St. Peter's. They have a giant pine cone. Also, got some more pictures for you. This picture, I will describe it, is the top is Babylonian god Marduk, and he's holding a pine cone. And then at the bottom, we see a pine cone in the staff of the Pope. He has a staff, right? And at the top of the staff is a crucified Jesus. It's a crucifix. But in the staff, randomly, is what looks like a pine cone. And they have the giant pine cone statue in Vatican City. Now, do we see anywhere in the Bible anything about pine cones that the Pope needs? First of all, there's no Pope in the Bible. But let's say there was a Pope. Is there anything about pine cones? No. Why would they have a pine cone statue and pine cones in their staffs? Well, we already read. Now, here's the thing. This pine cone, Manly P. Hall said, hey, this thing represents the pineal gland, the third eye. And that's one of the goals of the occult, is to open it and to become a god. And they knew this thing was right next to the Temple of Isis in Rome. And they put it where it is now. Now, if they knew that it was completely pagan from the occult and idolatry, and they were good Christians, wouldn't they destroy the idol and get rid of it? But they kept it. It's very easy to know what it means, to study it. Why would we keep this giant pine cone there? Well, I think they know. I think they know exactly what it means. And they put it right in front of your face. Okay, so that's that point, the pine cones and pineal glands. And one more, I was going to put this in here, but you can go look this up yourself. There's many accusations throughout history of popes utilizing sorcery. You can go look at this article, Popes and Sorcery at Occult world, occult-world.com, popes and sorcery. But, there's a bunch of other, there's books. There's a book called The Bad Popes. There's other articles and people who have done scholarly work studying some of these popes. Sylvester II, I believe, and a few other ones. They're accused of sorcery. And some of the things they say, well, these were just accusations that came about because there was a political conflict. And it was just their political enemies attacking them. But this came up about multiple different popes. And then also you will see that with some of these popes during those times, they also had other provable offenses that they were committing, nasty sins. You look into the Borgias, they were into some very disgusting licentious behavior. Some of them, their feet were rotting off their body from STDs and stuff. So, it's pretty bad. So it's not really a stretch that they would justify some of these things. So you can go look into that. But over and over again, we see this throughout history. And I showed you some very clear examples of the other things. And again, we could go and continue on. There are some other big things that I didn't put in here because I didn't want it to be too long. But that's pretty good for now. Now, let's move on to the next section, the last section. For most of its history, the Vatican has kept its esoteric beliefs, knowledge, and power under wraps, veiled in the exoteric symbolism and rituals. This will change. Now we're talking about the coming change. There will be a transformation of Mystery Babylon. Now, this is important because a lot of people, they have a very hard time understanding, this, how this applies to the Vatican. They're like, I don't get it. How are they this mother of harlots, this mistress of witchcrafts? How are they antichrist and all these other types of things? And they just don't see it because they see all the Christian veneer. They don't understand. But there will be a transformation. You can see it's already been happening, right? A lot of stuff started with Vatican II, right? Pope Francis started accelerating things. But there's going to be more of a transformation of Mystery Babylon. Look at what the Bible says the future will be like in the time after the man of sin is revealed. Okay? So this is going to help. We need to look at what the Bible clearly says is going to happen in the future. Okay? Look at what the Bible says the future will be like in the time after the man of sin is revealed, the Antichrist. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So, in the future, all the world's religions are gone and replaced with the worship of the man of sin. He exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. All the religions fade away. There comes a falling away first. There is a falling away from the faith, an apostasy. There has to be a destruction of the old to bring in the new. There has to be chaos before the order. That's how they do it. But all the world's religion's gone and replaced with the worship of the man of sin. Here's another verse, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9. Even him, talking about the man of sin, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. This happens after Satan has prepared the world through much deception for the worship of the beast. Okay? So there is a lot of preparation that has already been going on for a long time. It has greatly accelerated in the 1900s and the 60s. It really pumped it up. Then after the internet, we kicked it into high gear. And Now we are accelerating even more. But Satan has prepared, after Satan has prepared the world through much deception. A lot of media, movies and music and games and many different things have been preparing people through much deception for the worship of the beast. But it says, after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. After his working. Let's look at the next one. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? Everyone will worship the Antichrist and Satan as well. That will happen on this earth. Hard to believe now, is it? Well, it might not be as hard to believe when you see the way that the world is going. But everyone will worship the Antichrist and Satan as well. So I'm showing you how it will be all the way at the end, right? Because you see the way that it has been. We see how it's going to be at the end. But we're trying to talk about, well, how are we going to get there? How is the transformation going to happen? Well, there has to be. Right? Because if the end result is everyone's worshiping the Antichrist and Satan, obviously there has to be a destruction of the religions, transformation, which includes a transformation of the Vatican. Look at this. Revelation chapter 9, verse 20. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, and idols of gold, and silver, and brass, and stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. Think about this. Everyone will worship devils and practice sorcery in the future, in the end times. And this is after, trumpet judgments are happening. It says the people were worshiping devils and using sorcery. In the very end, people will be practicing sorcery. Why is that? Why would it be in the world in such a grand scale when a lot of times it's like not treated as normal? Because there's a transformation, and it's acceptable, and it's considered real, valuable, something that you should do, because there's been the transformation. Here's another verse, Revelation chapter 13, verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. The only ones who will not partake of this worldwide beast worship, which entails involvement with occult powers, are born-again Christians. The only group of people in the world that will not worship him. Everyone else will worship. All that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Everyone whose names are not written in the book of the life of the Lamb. So there will be no more exoteric veneers of religions. It's all gone at this point. Every single thing is gone. The only thing that's left is worship of the beast. Many have been hinting at and helping to prepare for the coming transformation, including the transformation of the Vatican to externalize the esoteric. That's what we're going towards. Okay? The Vatican has been a keeper of the mysteries, the mistress of witchcrafts. Holding these mysteries from Babylon, from pagan Rome, from Greece, right? They've been keeping all this occult knowledge and power, this esoteric knowledge, and they're going to externalize it. It's going to come out in the open. Say, yes, we have kept it. Maybe they'll open up the Vatican library and say, hey, look it, we got it. And now's the time to reveal it. And everything will be transformed. Now, like I said, a lot have been there has been various people hinting at it and helping to prepare for this transformation. I'll show you some examples. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit, he talked about this omega point, this point in the future of this, the future of humanity, this point of consciousness where everyone comes together, an ascension to godhood. It kind of has some overlaps with transhumanism. But he talks about this transformation. He was a big proponent of evolution, actually. He pushed that, helped to push that. But he talks about this transformation of humanity and also supporting this cosmic Christ thing, which is the next thing. Matthew Fox, who was a Dominican, another Catholic. He wrote a book called The Coming of the Cosmic Christ. And this cosmic Christ is more like this universal Christ figure that even is for those who are not Christians, for everyone. This cosmic Christ that transcends all religions. It's not the exclusive Christ of the Bible. And that's part of the coming transformation. Okay, so these writings have been helping to prepare the world for this transformation. Another one is Alice Bailey. Big occultist. She was a theosophist, Luciferian, right? Lucifer Publishing Company that she had originally. Then it was changed to Lucius Trust. But in her book, especially ones like Externalization of the Hierarchy, she talks about a one-world religion coming of Maitreya, the Christ. But this one-world religion, which there has to be a transformation. And she talks about how the old has to be done away with to bring in the new one world religion. Then we have Albert Pike. He had, some speculate whether this was real or not. But the interesting thing is it just really ties in and makes sense with a lot of other things that are easily proven. So I'm just going to take a quote from his letter that he was said to have written to Giuseppe Mazzini. Albert Pike was a very important Freemason in history. He was a Confederate general. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. He helps to create the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. He wrote the book Morals and Dogma, a very important book in Freemasonry. But he was supposed to have written this letter in the 1800s describing a plan of 3 world wars that described World War I, World War II, and that a coming World War III is sort of a 3-step plan to get to the New World Order, right? So this is about the Third World War. He says this: meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. So he's saying we are going to unleash the chaos and everything will be destroyed, right? Utter chaos. They have to create it. Destroy everything old. Then everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against a world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization. And the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. And then the last thing he says is this manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And that is definitely a true thing, that atheism has no place in the future as well. They want spirituality, just not biblical Christianity, right? So they say destruction of Christianity. Well, not all true Christians will be destroyed, but all of the professing Christianity, this will actually be what I call the threshing floor. once persecution comes, many of the fakes will fall away, and they will completely renounce their fake Christianity. You will see huge swaths of professing Christians completely forsake the faith. Now, in some ways, this is a terrible thing, right? A lot of terrible things are going to happen. But in another sense, it is kind of a good thing that a lot of false Christianity will go away. And that the only thing that will be left is the remnant of the true believers. But one of the other things that he says is, after all this destruction and chaos, right? It says, then it will be time. They will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, finally brought out into the public view. And this is that coming transformation that we're talking about. That they're, like he says, finally brought out in the public view. They've been keeping all this in the secret societies we're talking about in the Vatican. They keep the mysteries, all this esoteric knowledge, and they finally externalize it, bring it all in the open and say, hey, this is what all this stuff has meant the whole time. And it points to Lucifer, because it talks about worshiping the beast and the dragon as well, which is the devil. So there's that. Then one last one. People might be kind of shocked by this, but I will explain. Alexander Dugin and Steve Bannon. Traditionalism. Now, this is something to study for sure if you don't know what I'm talking about. But Alexander Dugin has definitely influenced Putin and the Russian government. And, in fact, they used some of his writings officially and used him for some official things. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I'll tell you where to go. And then Steve Bannon, believe it or not, he's into the same type of beliefs of traditionalism. Now, if you don't know what traditionalism is, I'm going to explain it to you. It doesn't mean you have traditional values and you believe a woman and a man should get married and stuff like that. That's not what it is. It's a completely different religious belief. The traditionalist or perennialist school is a group of 20th, 21st century thinkers who believe in the existence of a perennial wisdom or perennial philosophy, primordial and universal truths which form the source for and are shared by all the major world religions. Now, I'm going to tell you a book that can break all this down for you. It's called War for Eternity by Benjamin Teitelbaum. You can get that on audiobook, War for Eternity. But in the book, it basically kind of, the guy who wrote it, Teitelbaum, he's a liberal. He's not a right-winger at all, not conservative. But he was able to gain the confidence of Steve Bannon and kind of follow him around, interview him, Dugin, and he documented how they met together and documenting all their beliefs, plus some other guys, to influential right-wing leaders in the world, that they were all into this belief system called traditionalism. And basically, here's a couple key points from it, is that they believe in the past there was one religion, it got broken apart, and now within all the world's religions now, there's kind of a kernel of the truth. They all have a piece. And so what we need to do is a destruction of the present world. There's different cycles. And there needs to be a chaos cycle where we destroy everything. And then we can come back to that one religion again. And it very much ties together with the theme of what I've been talking about, this coming transformation, and that it's actually something that they want to happen and to accelerate. And there's some even crazier stuff that I found. I can't even put it in this teaching. But trust me, there's even more behind this than you could even imagine. But if you want to start, then you can listen more to that book or read it, whatever. But anyways, that kind of goes along with it too. Now, this transformation will result in a deep hatred for the Christ of the Bible. They will be so blind and deluded that they will try to fight against him. Okay? Let me say that again. This coming transformation will result in a deep hatred for the Christ of the Bible. Okay? It's already, the Bible already says, we know that we're of God and the whole world lieth in wickedness. Jesus Christ said, marvel not if they hate you. They hated me before they hated you. The world hates Christ, right? But in the future, after this transformation, they will not, when there's the worship of the beast, they will hate Christ like you have never seen before. Hate the Christ of the Bible. And here's how crazy it will get. They will be so blind, so deluded, they will think that they can fight against Christ. And they will try to fight against Christ when he returns. Now, what will happen in the end? This is the end of the teaching. We'll end here. Revelation chapter 19, verse 11. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with the vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth the sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and of the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Okay? So we see here this picture in Revelation 19:19. The kings of the earth, the Antichrist and the kings of the earth, all the leaders, armies, gathered together to make war against Jesus Christ, who is returning, him that sat on the horse. They will think they can fight against Jesus Christ. What happens? Revelation 19:20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth. And all the fowls were filled with their flesh. And so the Antichrist and the false prophet cast in the lake of fire. The rest of the armies of the Antichrist were killed. Jesus Christ wins. The King of Kings and Lord of Lords will not be defeated. He will conquer all of his enemies. It says in righteousness, he doth judge and make war. And he said he will make all of his enemies his footstool. That's what's going to happen. Every single enemy will be made his footstool. Even in the end, death. He will conquer them all. Now, that includes this mystery Babylon, the Vatican, the Mistress of Witchcrafts, will be conquered as well. And so, regardless of where you are, what side you're on, the most important thing is that you recognize the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the side you want to be on. Because if you are anywhere near that other side, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, any of her daughters, you fall under that umbrella somewhere, you need to come out of it. You need to repent of it now before it's too late. And I'm telling you all now, better get right with God now. Better prepare now. Because that transformation I'm talking about here, it's coming real soon. Real soon. And so I pray that you get right with God now. Do not wait. Do not procrastinate. And repent. And believe the gospel. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. Do not wait. Put it off for another day. Because another day might not come. And pretty soon there may come a time where things start happening faster than you could even keep track of. And you won't know what to do. Well, I'm telling you what to do right now. So, it's on you now. I'm blowing the trumpet. I'm warning you. So please listen and heed. And last word about the Vatican. We're going to be doing more about, Lord willing, we'll be doing more on the Vatican. You can see that it's a very important thing that is talked about in the Bible and not talked about much in churches. I wonder why. But it's important. It's an important biblical theme to cover Rome through many different aspects. The little horn, the mother of harlots, the mistress of witchcrafts. It's clearly laid out in the Bible. We expose it. We expound it. We're proving the unfruitful works of darkness. And then it is shown, it is proven, and there is no excuse to deny the truth. And if you do, you are blinded by the devil. And pray for your eyes to be open from Almighty God. And that's all I got for you today. Please like, share, subscribe. Check all the links below. Subscribe to alternative links, including Odyssey and Telegram feed, because at any moment, boop, this channel's gone. So please make sure you subscribe to those things, because you never know what'll happen. But thank you for all the prayers and support and all that good stuff. God bless you. Have a good day.